that's quite a view. Across those mountains is the desert. Would you believe this whole Los Angeles region was desert at one time? We get a reminder of that every year when we feel the hot wind blowing. It's dangerous and it's dry. The climate and the scenery can take on a whole new meaning when the brush that covers the hillside is dry and when the Santa Ana wind blows. A lot of my friends have lived here in Bel Air. It's an ideal situation. You've got peace and tranquility way above the traffic and the smog. And yet, Hollywood is only 2 or 3 minutes away. You just drive down that road there and you'll find yourself on Sunset Boulevard. Bel Air grew up along the ridges and canyons of the Santa Monica Mountains. It's a wealthy suburb.
Before the war, these lots were considered valueless land. They were given away with encyclopedias as like coupons. And after the war, a new technology developed so that these houses then became sanctuaries for film stars and all sorts of people. And suddenly the land became valuable.
But its rural character has been carefully preserved. The roads are narrow and winding. Chaparral covers the hillside, pleasant enough to look at, but if it should ever catch fire, 1 acre of this brush would burn like 2,000 gallons of gasoline.
The chaparral, or the native bushes and brush that grows here, have, through the God knows how many years, developed the ability to survive without any water. And the way they do that is to store oil in their systems.
This mesquite that we have here, this oily bush that grows on the hillside, is literally packed with oil. And it gets to the point where it quite literally explodes.
The brush is at its driest and most explosive in the late fall, which is precisely the season when the hot Santa Ana wind blows in from the desert.
It's, I guess, like a Mistral or the Arabian Khamsin or those kind of hot winds that are supposed to drive men mad, and the legionnaires, remember, go bury themselves in the sand or flee out into the desert, that kind of thing.
You must understand that flames can move through the brush in Southern California at the same speed at which the wind is blowing, and we get 60 and 70-mile-an-hour winds in those fires.
I have seen it outrun a deer, and deer are quite swift.
People accept high risk of fire as a small price to pay for the pleasures of living in Bel Air.
We didn't give it any special consideration until the big one, World War II, as it were.
The richest people in the world live here, and after all, why should they live here if it's so particularly high fire? It's it's the most beautiful area in America, they say. I love it.
To the Los Angeles Fire Department, November 6, 1961, was not just another day. It was a day when they knew conditions were ripe for a brush fire.
We had been notified much earlier in the morning that it was a red day, Santa Ana condition, wind that is. The humidity was low, the fuel moisture was low. All of the indices that we use indicated that if we had a fire, it would be a bad one.
Now, I recall going in and saying to my wife that if this continues, we're going to have a great big fire sooner or later, and this is the worst possible moment for some idiot to drop his cigar in the bushes.
It was a day something like this. That is, it was a lovely day, and there was a wind blowing like this. And when you have a brush fire of that nature in Southern California with this kind of wind, you have a prescription for a catastrophe.
The first signs of fire were seen at 8:10 in the morning by some contractors clearing brush. They raised the alarm. The first firefighters to arrive were able to stop the fire spreading east and west. But the strong wind was blowing it south toward the houses of Bel Air, and there was no holding it.
I looked out the office window, saw smoke in the distance, and I called my wife, Jenny, and hey, it's smoking up there. What gives? Something like that. And she didn't even know about it.
My businessman called me and said, the whole Bel Air is burning. I said, well, what can I do about it? He says, nothing.
The rap on the door when the fireman told me I had to leave was when I really panicked. Then I realized that this was serious. And your mind just blanks out completely. All you can think of is to get out of here as fast as you can before you lose your life. And that's it, you run.
I was one of the first reporters to go into the field. We could see the pall of smoke. We could smell it. It was low to the ground. It was as though a dark cloud had passed over the Southern California sky, and there were a lot of embers dropping out of the sky and into the street, and we began to see people coming down out of the hills.
A major emergency was declared. All units and units from the neighboring counties rolled out to meet it. The houses in the path of the fire stood no chance. This was no longer simply a brush fire. It was a major house-to-house conflagration.
The officers were waving everyone away, but they did let me through. I told them that I lived in here, my family was up here, and I had to get through, and they waved me on. But I don't think anyone got through after that. I closed the garage door, went out in the back, got up on the roof, and went to work. And by that time, the fire had hit and just lit up like a Christmas tree.